It's time for Reason.
No, we changed it. We're the ones with the power of the purse. We'll decide what inflation's going to look like when it comes to educational funding or what that dollar amount is actually going to be. Thanks for the input. I'm glad you like the formula. This is what we're going to stick with. People are tired of it, and if they continue to rail on it, they're going to begin losing support of it from the general public because it's gone on for 20 years. So now they're changing the argument.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
That's what I'm talking about. Welcome into the Voice of Reason, broadcasting live out of the heart of the nation here in Wichita, Kansas, on the Big Talker, 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 on the FM side, KQAM, simulcasting on TV as well, KGPT TV, channel 2610. Good morning. What's up? Welcome in. Great to have you along today on a Patriotic Tuesday. Is the way we roll today every single Tuesday of every single week of all year long. Welcome in, 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. If you want to join in, we got a lot to get to today. A big show. We got a lot of great guests today. Looking forward to all of it right here on the Voice of Reason. Facebook Live feed is up and rolling as well. Would love to hear your thoughts on Facebook, facebook.com/1480KQAM. I have to say, and I don't want to spend too terribly much time on this, but this entire meeting with Putin and this whole press conference that President Trump did and everybody being all up in arms about it, I understand the sentiment between the fact that he needed to talk tough and he needed to be tough with Vladimir Putin. I get it. At the same time, do we not understand how to play nice for a second while we're trying to work for a larger goal? Have we forgotten how to play the long-term goal here? Have we forgotten how to play the progressives especially, they're the ones that love to play the long-term game and love to play the chipping away at something, the long-term agenda, trying to get their agenda in throughout multiple different steps. Would this not be the same type of thing here? The criticism that I've been hearing is that if Barack Obama and Donald Trump had done the same thing, had the same type of meeting with Vladimir Putin, and they were very just mushy-mushy with Vladimir and with Russia and with the Kremlin, that conservatives would be very critical of Obama. And I would agree with that sentiment, that we would be very critical of Barack Obama if he did the same thing. If you remember the audio clip of him saying, don't worry, once I get elected, I'll have a little bit more free reign and we can start working together a little bit more and it'll be fantastic and it would be wonderful. If you remember that conversation, and we criticize that very much so. Now, they're saying, Republicans, you're just hypocrites. You got to remember, though, is that there's a difference in character between Barack Obama and Donald Trump. Barack Obama did not have the best interests of the United States in mind. You got to remember that Barack Obama went on the national apology tour to apologize for everything that America stood for. Not for what we've done, some of what we've done, but not for who we are. Oh, yeah, it is for who we are. Not for our history. Oh, wait a second. It was for our history. He apologized for everything that America stood for, that America had done, that America is. Barack Obama apologized for that. He didn't want us to be who we are. He didn't want us to be successful. He didn't want us to be the flourishing United States of America, the greatest powerhouse in the entire world. He didn't want us to be that. And he apologized for that every day. Donald Trump has a different agenda. He wants America great. He wants to make America fantastic. He wants to make America great again. He wants to put America first. So when he's talking to Russia and he's talking the way he did, there's an ulterior motive there that would be different than what Barack Obama's agenda would actually be and the motive that Barack Obama would have in that type of situation. Would there not be? So we need to look at the differences here. Now, again, I'm not an expert on foreign policy in this sense yet, and I say because it interests me and I'm trying to study it more. And that's what we have to worry. That's what we have to start looking at, is what's going on around the world. The fact that look, Vladimir Putin is a KGB member. He is a Soviet-style leader. He is a dictator. He is a horrible human being. Let's just put it right out there. Republican, Democrat, whoever, independent, progressive, liberal, conservative, I don't care. We can all agree on that. That Vladimir Putin is a terrible, horrible human being, a KGB member, a Soviet style. And oh, by the way, progressives who love socialism and love communism, why don't you go over there and see how well it works out for you? while you criticize Donald Trump for wanting to be buddy and buddy with him. I don't get the progressives and the liberal hypocrisy that comes from the progressives when they say that we need socialism, we need communism, we need to get rid of the capitalist system. It's a terrible, horrible thing. But oh, by the way, don't you dare start working with Vladimir Putin, who's a communist dictator over in Russia trying to bring back the Soviet-style government. Because that's really, really bad. We can't have that form of government, even though that's what we want to bring here to the United States under someone like Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. The hypocrisy is mind-boggling. Now, for the meeting that happened yesterday, why wasn't he tougher? Look, when you meet someone the very first time, and they're an enemy, and you know they're an enemy, you tread lightly, do you not? Let's say that you're in a relationship and you have concerns that your significant other may be seeing another individual, but you don't know that for sure. You have suspicions. What do? You can handle it one of two ways. You can either go and confront them and say, hey, listen here, fool, and you can go after them. Or you can tread lightly. You can play nice, you can get on their good side, and then you can kind of get the evidence that you need in order to prove before you move forward with some type of action. There are two different ways you can do this. You can go in the Rambo style, swinging. You can go in the Rambo style, shooting it up and doing whatever you have to do, or you can go in covertly like the quiet little ninja, and you can do your investigation. You can figure it out, and then you can move forward. Donald Trump chose the latter. He chose the side of playing nice, to try and get on the good side, to say that we want to work together on issues, so that way we can continue to the investigation, and then we can call them out and say, look, you guys lied, or this is what's going on. We're not okay with it. You guys tried to influence our election. That's not cool. And oh, by the way, we're not going to allow it to happen any longer. And don't you try it any longer if we want to have any type of relationship in the future. But now is not the time to do so. We have to tread lightly here. Now, again, can you talk a little bit tougher? Maybe. I don't know. Do we know the internal discussions that happened on before they met and after they met and during they met? Do we know what was going on? Do we know the feeling of what was happening at that time? Of course we don't. We're not there. So we can only judge based on what we've seen. And what I'm seeing right now is the fact that the liberal media progressives are absolutely trying to do whatever they can to destroy President Donald Trump by saying that, I don't know if you saw this or not, according to The Sun, the Cold War is over. Donald Trump hails first step in a brighter future following a historic talk with Vladimir Putin in Helsinki, which is fine. But then you see something like John Brennan, Donald Trump's press conference and performance rises to and exceeds the threshold of high crimes and misdemeanors, and it's nothing short of treasonous, and should be impeachable because of this meeting. What in the world is impeachable? We've taken hyperbole and taken it to an entirely new level. I was in a discussion yesterday with social media, like I always like to do every once in a while, and there is a mentality on the left side of the aisle to where this is it. This is it. If you don't believe that he is an absolute racist, sexist, xenophobic, homophobic, yada, 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 treasonous dummy, then you are not worth discussion. You are not worth a dialogue. You are not worth even being a human being because you are a terrible, horrible person, and you probably need to reevaluate your life. That is the mentality that they have. So there is no talking them out of that. There is no even commonsensical form of saying, you know what, people have different opinions and you get over it. It's not even that. You are a troll. You are a cultist for Donald Trump, and you are everything that he is on that list because you support him, and therefore he needs to be impeached, he needs to be removed, and every one of his followers and supporters needs to be removed as well, according to this side of the aisle. So you're never going to get them to agree that there's actually a difference in opinion and that Donald Trump has a different agenda than what Barack Obama had at the time that he was in office and when they tried to have these types of conversations. Let me tell you something. Donald Trump has fulfilled just about everything that he said he wanted to do. Donald Trump actually got the embassy moved in Jerusalem. Donald Trump actually had a conversation and is still having conversations with Kim Jong-un in North Korea. Donald Trump actually sat down and had a meeting with President Vladimir Putin of Russia in order to try and mend those bonds. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? Why is that a bad thing? Does that mean that we like him as a leader? No. We must respect him, as I've said many times before. We need to respect him as a leader. We need to respect him as who he is because he is a very powerful leader, not a good leader, but a powerful leader. He is a very strong leader. He is a very bold leader. And he is a nationalist in his country, knowing that his country is the greatest thing on the face of the earth, and he becomes a bully because of that. Which means that we need to play, what do they say? Keep your friends close, but keep your enemies closer. Why do you think that we would try and do something like that? Can we think just for a second a little bit deeper than just the surface of this and saying, oh my gosh, he's just a puppet of Vladimir Putin, and he just went way too far trying to be nice yesterday, and oh my gosh, I can't believe that he did that, and that was almost treasonous, and it was high crimes and misdemeanors, and he needs to be impeached because of those actions because he is nothing more than the tool and the puppet while he disregards our agencies and while he tries to be buddy-buddy with Vladimir Putin. Can we think just a little bit deeper for a second and figure out why he's doing what he's doing? Will the media or will the progressives or will even some Republicans ever give him credit for actually knowing what he's doing at the time? Now, again, I don't blindly follow, but I do understand that with someone like that, with that type A personality, with someone who's a business leader, with someone who actually is a very successful businessman, that there's an end game, that it's the first talk if you're looking to expand a project. If you're looking to create a relationship between two major corporations, the very first one, regardless of whether you like each other or not, the first one is just to get to know each other a little bit, is to play nice to a little bit, is to throw each other a little bit of a bone and try and make it all happy hunky-dory. So that way you start feeling each other out. It's the two type A personalities. It's the two pit bulls that are circling each other right now, smelling each other's butts. Because that's where it really is. That's because that's how you start gauging your enemy. It's how many metaphors do I have to make here? It is the MMA press conference where the two fighters sit there and stare each other down for the media, and they start gauging each other and sizing each other up because that's what we're doing. They're playing nice on the surface. Do you really think that we're playing nice behind the scenes? Do you really think that? Give me a break. 316-721-8255. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on Russia today. I mean, everybody's going to be talking about it. That's the national news. We get a lot of statewide and local news to talk about today that I think is going to be a lot more interesting for us. But I had to comment on this because it's absolutely absurd that now we're trying to, again, advocate for impeachment for Donald Trump, saying that it was high crimes and treasonous for him to do this meeting. And then even Republicans are trying to shun him and saying, how dare that you actually had this meeting and why were you not as tough as you needed to be? I think it's completely absurd. And again, it melts your mind with how ridiculous some people act in these situations. Let's go to the phones, get your thoughts on this. 316-721-8255, line number 1. Good morning. What's your name?
This is Pete.
Good morning, Pete. What's going on, sir?
Well, I wanted to touch base with you on this Russian thing. Look, in these indictments, you cannot tell me that these were not timed to coincide with the gotcha questions with the press to work together. And as far as the indictments themselves, they're absolutely useless.
Sure.
Do you really think Vladimir Putin is going to hand over these guys to our justice system?
Oh, yeah, they're just going to hand them over and say, you know what, you're right, we did some stuff. Here's the people that did it, and go ahead and prosecute them.
Yeah, so that on its face is a crock. Mm-hmm. That right there is a crock. That is a showboat action by the Mueller team. And this was done to set. They knew Trump was going to have the summit with Putin, and they knew this, so they set all this up to frame Trump for the gotcha.
Sure.
And Chris Wallace pontificating in front of Putin and throwing out those indictments for Putin to look at. Talk about a bunch of acting. That guy ought to get an Academy Award for that.
Sure. No, you're right. I mean, and then we see just yesterday as well to where 12 individuals were arrested when it comes to collusion and Russian spies, quote unquote, that are working for the Kremlin. One of them, which of course now they're going after conservatives, going after Republicans, going after the NRA even, as 29-year-old woman accused of acting as a covert agent inside the U.S. on behalf of a senior Kremlin official and hosting different events infiltrating American political organizations and including the National Rifle Association. The charges were brought up to the U.S. Attorney District of Columbia, do not appear to stem from the Mueller investigation, so something completely different. And now, of course, we're, of course, Russian agents, because now we had a Russian agent that was trying to infiltrate the NRA, held political events through the NRA, and many Republicans attended. So therefore, the Republican Party as a whole must be colluding with Russian agents, right? Yeah.
Well, look, this is McCarthyism in reverse.
Sure.
This is what we are seeing here is just exactly what McCarthy did all those years ago. And if for those of you millennials that don't know what Joseph McCarthy is, you need to go look him up.
Oh, sure. I'm very well aware of McCarthyism, and it was. It's a good point. I mean, this is the reverse McCarthyism, as we were so scared about anybody being a communist and anyone being a member of the Kremlin and Russia and that sort of thing. I mean, nowadays we have them truly infiltrating, and we're not even trying to weed them out. And now, it's a scary deal all around, because now we're trying to lump in an entire political party like the Republicans, saying, oh, look, the entire Republican Party is in bed with Russia because they paid for the election, they swayed people to vote for Donald Trump, and oh, look, now we're seeing people like inside the NRA that may be members of the Kremlin trying to relay information from them, and Republicans are all in support of it, which isn't the case.
Well, and for Brennan to be referring to Trump as having committed treason, coming from a communist like Brennan, I mean, yeah.
Doesn't hold a whole lot of water. Right.
No. If anyone ought to be up on charges, it ought to be Brennan and his buddy Clapper.
Sure. Well, that would make sense, but, that's never going to happen. So I appreciate it, my friend. We got to take a break, but you're absolutely right. I mean, we have some issues. And for the investigation, by the way, under the NRA and the gal that's actually accused of working with the NRA, I say, so what? So what? How many people, by the way, are sick and tired of hearing about Russian collusion? We've heard it for the last year and a half. They've tried the investigation. If you watch like the Sunday morning shows talking about this, that's all they've talked about for the last year and a half. Now, of course, they're going to continue to talk about it because there's new stories that came out on this. We're sick and tired of hearing it. Outside of Democrats and outside of the media, no one cares anymore. If you had any information and any intel that Donald Trump and his campaign were specifically involved with Russia, we would have found it by now. We haven't found anything. Maybe some independent groups and individuals have been able to find some Kremlin workers and some undercover Russian agents, but under the Trump administration, no. Under the campaign, no. So let's go ahead and prosecute these individuals. Let's tell them that we're not going to allow that any longer. We build up our security walls, and then we go from there. But does that mean that Donald Trump has to go after Vladimir Putin for the first time that they actually met while they hold a press conference together, saying that they want peace, saying that the two powerhouses of the world actually need to start working together a little bit and find some common ground so that way we don't start a World War III? If that's a bad thing, then I don't know what to say to you progressives. I don't know how to respond to something like that. If you think that, just like you being in the wrong with North Korea, that if you want a World War III, if you want a nuclear war, if you want conflict, then all the power to you, and we can see what your priorities actually are. 24 minutes past the hour. Happy Monday, or Tuesday morning. Not a Monday anymore. It's a Tuesday. Hashtag Patriotic Tuesday. Lot to get to today. Stay here.
The voice of reason with Andy Hoosier.
To get to today, we're going to shift gears a little bit away from the Russia, my friend. We don't need no more vodka at 6 a.m. No, we don't need it. We'll have a little fun today. The NRA endorsements have come out for the statewide races in the state of Kansas. I will run through that list and kind of some interesting endorsements on that, plus a lot more to get to today on a hashtag Patriotic Tuesday. Stay right here on The Voice of Reason.
Home for entertaining radio.
This is your fault, too, man. I keep missing Rush Limbaugh's morning update every morning because I'm listening to your show.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Hey, welcome back into The Voice Reason. Good hashtag Patriotic Tuesday. It's great to have you along today, waking you up the best way we know how to do so. Starting your morning off better than a cup of coffee, a shot of espresso, even an energy drink. That's the way we roll. That's the fun we like to have today, and welcome into it. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. Coming up on the program today, just an hour from now. As usual, it is a Tuesday. We have Bryan, Frye, Wichita City Councilman, joining the program in studio for a little bit. Also, at 8 o'clock, we're going to have Greg Orman, the Independent Gubernatorial candidate, coming on the show to talk about his vision for America and for the state of Kansas. And we look forward to chatting with him coming up. It's time for us to start talking to many of the candidates going into this election, and a lot of the heated, by the way, House races that are going to be happening soon as well. We have Renee Erickson coming up, district number 87. She'll be on the program tomorrow. I did reach out to her opponent as well, Jeff Kennedy, the Republican primary challenger, and we'll see if we can get him on the program. Also, down in the southern end, down in the Wellington area, district number 80, I believe it is, Bill Riley, who is challenging Anita Judd Jenkins for the House seat. I have reached out to both of them, and we'll get both of them on the program as well, too. Those two really are two really hotly contested races in the area, so looking forward to chatting with both of those races, and you, the listener, getting to understand who the candidates are, what they stand for, and who you're going to support when the early voting begins. Voter registration, by the way, ending today. Today is the last day to register to vote if you have not done so, which means get the hell out there and go register to vote, because we need you to vote. We need activism. We need excitement. We need entertainment. We need you to go out and actually show up to the voting booth this primary election. I say it over and over and over, and I will continue to say it over and over and over. The primary election is the most important election that we can possibly have. As long as Republicans just show up to the general election, we win. Here in Kansas, as long as we just show up, we win. That's all we have to do there. It's not a whole lot of effort. You just show up and, I'm here to do my job. Punch the button and there you go. But the primary really is the biggest thing that we need to worry about. So the primary election coming up, early voting beginning next week. Be prepared for that. We'll have some information on how to how to go and vote, where to go vote, all that information. But today is the last day to register if you have not done so, which, by the way, the candidates are going to be stepping up their games going into this election because, well, we are just a week away from early voting. So more information to come on that. I do have the NRA's official endorsement list for all the state house races, for the U.S. House of Representatives going into that race, and the statewide races. Some big news on that front. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. When it comes to elections, when it comes to the campaign style, and if anybody has ever helped out a campaign, has endorsed a campaign, has ever campaigned for somebody and volunteered for a campaign, then you kind of know the process. But this word gets thrown out all the time, this grassroots campaigning. And the question is, what is grassroots campaigning? Well, grassroots campaigning is really just the door-to-door, the actually boots-on-the-ground type of campaign. You can do it in many different ways. You can do it with advertising through TV or through radio or through billboards or that sort of thing. You can do it with yard signs all over the place, but the yard signs, if you don't actually talk to people and have them put them in their yard and get the permission to do so, then you just put them in right away. You know, you see them on the side of the street and the gutters as you drive by the roads. The problem is that they can be taken out, and, you know, that doesn't really help the cause a whole lot. And then you just got to spend a lot of money to replace them all the time. So that could be a campaign tactic. You could base yours solely on social media, which some individuals now like to do, is base their campaigns solely on social media. The problem is that not a whole lot of people, or not everybody, actually has social media. So that could be a challenge. Grassroots campaigning means that you're actually there with individuals, boots on the ground, knocking on people's doors and saying, hey, this is so-and-so. I'm running for this seat. Here's what I stand for. Do you have any questions? I'd really appreciate you to vote for me. And, oh, by the way, would you like to put out a yard sign? That's grassroots campaigning. Boots on the ground. It's very difficult. It's a lot of work, and it's a very difficult thing. But if you do it, that is the most successful way to win. There is a story from KMUW with NPR here for the Wichita area. First-time candidate Ron M. Estes leading grassroots campaign in Kansas' 4th Congressional District. Now, Ron M. Estes, of course, being the Ron Estes wanting to challenge Congressman Ron Estes in this race. And as you know, this individual has not shown any public face yet, has not done a whole lot of interviews, if any at all, has not really shown his face at all, and said now, according to him, that the August 7th primary is just weeks away and that he is leading in the grassroots campaign. We pretty much have a grassroots campaign, according to Essa said during a recent interview. We'll see how far it gets. A grassroots campaign means that you're talking to people on the ground. If you've seen any, which I have not seen a single one yet, if you've seen a yard sign, if you've seen a flyer, if you've seen a mailer, maybe something that you got in the mail, if you've seen something talking about Ron M. Estes, please call me and tell me, because I've not seen a thing. I don't know what he means by grassroots campaign if you've not seen a knock on your door, if you've not seen a yard sign, whether in someone's actual yard or out in the public venue somewhere. If you've seen a mailer letter, the little postcard thing that comes in and says, oh, this candidate's terrible and you should vote for me and this is why. Or they say, oh, this is my record and because of, and please support me, whatever it is, but the mailer, something. If there's a grassroots campaign going, then there would be hordes of people out knocking on people's doors trying to campaign for this individual. I have not seen it. Maybe I've missed it. I have been involved somewhat in some of the politics around, trying to go around and see what the yard signs look like, what the activism is, kind of get a feel for the community as we go into the election. I've been trying to get out there and do that. I have not seen a single bit of Ron M. Estes in his campaign. I haven't seen it. Not to mention, I don't know if you're aware of or not, but there is a regional Republican headquarters for campaigning, to where you can walk in and you can see a campaign yard sign for any candidate that's Republican in the area, primaries or no primaries. And you can see their yard signs and you can help volunteer and you can do whatever you want to do. And you can actually help out there. And they have the phone banks there and they have the yard signs. It's the headquarters for all the Republican candidates. Is Ron M. Estes being part of that? Is he being involved in that? I haven't seen anything. Maybe I'm wrong. How do you expect to win a race, which I don't think he expects to win this race, but how do you expect to win by not campaigning at all, by not even showing your face, by not showing up to events, by not trying to actually be out in grassroots campaign, and then you say, we're just doing the grassroots campaigning. No, we haven't done a whole lot yet because, we're pretty much just a grassroots campaign. We'll see how far it gets us. How far it gets you? You haven't done anything. And I don't mean to show a lot of attention to an individual that doesn't really deserve to get a lot of attention because he's not going to win. But it really, again, goes back to the fact of this is not about a campaign to actually do something productive. It is a sabotage mentality to say we despise conservative Republicans so much that we will sabotage it by trying to put a fake name onto there, a real name, but I mean a fake candidate with that name to try and sabotage and see if we can pull 5, 10, 15%. That is sad. It's pathetic. And if this is the dirty politics that's going to be played, what's going to happen in the general election? We have James Thompson that's fighting against Laura Lombard right now when it comes to the Democratic primary for that 4th congressional seat. We have Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez that are coming to the rally on Friday to try and rally for James Thompson. What type of shenanigans is going to be pulled in the general election? Now, I'm not saying in trying to criticize and trying to say that they're going to be throwing bombs, that they're going to be doing something dirty, but I am saying that this Ron M. Estes has a long record of financial political contributions to James Thompson, to Barack Obama, and to Democratic candidates. It's been a record. They're on record doing it, and we need to be concerned about that. Now, whether it was the idea of the DNC or the Democratic Party in the state, whether it was an idea of the James Thompson campaign, or whether it was an idea just from the individual who does not like Congressman Ron Estes and wanted to go after. But the grassroots campaign, well, first off, we need to define what grassroots campaigning is, which I think we just did. And unless that I'm actually aware of any type of yard sign, any type of door knocking, any type of mailer, then they lied. Because you can't just say you have a grassroots campaign by saying that you announce that you want to run and then stay in your home, not do any interviews, and then not actually go out and knock on doors to talk to people. That's not a grassroots campaign. That's a lie. But the entire thing's been a lie from the beginning, hasn't it? 316-721-8255. It's very troubling. Now the fact that politics has gotten even dirtier than what they used to in the past is very concerning to me, because before at least we used to hold some set of standards. We used to hold a level of standards to some degree by individuals who wanted to run for office to where we respected the other candidates. We didn't do the personal attacks. We didn't go after that. We didn't try to sabotage. We didn't try and do it in sneaky ways. We used to have a level of standard when it came to politics, when it came to elections. You may hate their guts, but at the end of the day, you wouldn't go and sabotage them. Politics is a dirty business. I get it. But you wouldn't do shenanigans like this just to try and sabotage the other individual without any hopes of even trying to win the election. 316-721-8255. Let's go to the phones. Get your thoughts on this and more. Line number 1, good morning. What's your name?
Scott.
What's going on, Scott? How are you?
Well, it's just a matter of sticking to the facts, because here in Wichita, the facts are that even though you got a mayor, he's only got one vote in the say-so of things, and you had city council people who went along with the fact that a man was killed on his porch and nothing was done about it. Innocent man, unarmed man, nothing was done about it.
We did do something about it.
They didn't do anything about it. They let the guy go. That's what they did.
We did do something about it.
Yeah, okay. If you say doing something means letting the guy go, then okay, they did something.
We didn't let him go. We ended up arresting the swatters. They're on trial now.
The guy who did the murder, that's what I'm talking about. He's not in jail.
The swatters,
the guy
sure.
who did the murder is not in jail.
The swatters are. I mean, they're being persecuted.
No, the murderer is not in jail. The guy who killed the man is not in jail.
Because he was cleared.
There you go.
He was cleared. I mean, he was protected under the law with the action that was done. I mean, he was cleared.
Then the other thing is that this is the same mayor and city council who didn't want anybody to celebrate the 4th of July because, I understand this is a police state, so they can't have you doing too much celebrating, even though they allowed their friends in the River Festival, and I think they got this little jazz thing over here on Rock Road. I think they were shooting fireworks, and that was okay, so they have special interest people who they allow to do things. But other than that.
Well, I will say, Scott, and I got to take a break here, so I appreciate it. What I will say to that one is that they are, they tried it. They tried the rule. It didn't necessarily work to the degree that they wanted to because of the fact that, they did hand out a lot of fees and fines when it came to the firework ordinance. They are going to revisit that, and I think that they're going to change the ruling on that. I think whether it's the enforcement up until that point, whether they're going to try and negotiate for the night of, but I think they are going to reconvene. They tried it. It didn't work, so let's try something different, and that's the beauty of the system that we have rather than keeping it in concrete, not being able to change anything. Appreciate the phone call, Scott. Got to take a break. 48 minutes past the hour on a hashtag Patriotic Tuesday. This is The Voice of Reason.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Redneck rock and roll, baby. That's the way we roll on a Monday. I keep thinking it's a Monday. Why is it? It's a Tuesday. It's a Tuesday, not a Monday. Welcome back in to your hashtag Patriotic Tuesday. Love it. 316-721-8255. 316-721-TALK. We got a lot to get to today. We do have the NRA endorsements we'll talk about here in just a minute. Plus, the comparison between Kansas and other states in relation to being a sanctuary state, illegal immigration, how we're going to enforce it or lack thereof. We'll have some fun with that one, along with your phone calls. And with those, we got some lined up. Let's sneak you guys in before the end of the hour. First off, line number 1. Good morning. What's your name?
Hi, Andy. This is Helen.
Good morning, Helen. How are you?
I'm doing just great,
Good.
and I hope you are too.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. According to God's law, Donald Trump is handling this like he should. When he has laws for when you're dealing with your enemies, he says in Deuteronomy 20, verse 10, when thou comest nigh unto a city or a nation to fight against it, then proclaim peace unto it. 11, and it shall be, if it, the nation or city, make the answer of peace, and open unto thee, then it shall be that all the people that is found therein shall be tributaries unto thee, and they shall serve thee.
Very interesting. Well, good. So he is handling it the right way. I mean, of course, the progressives who aren't going to like him anyways are going to criticize him anyways. But regardless, I mean, you're right. And again, from the religious standpoint, that's an interesting take on it too. From the political standpoint, if you ever read, The Art of War, you keep your friends close, your enemies closer, sort of thing. And it's just common sense. The first meeting that you have, the first way that you actually dialogue with somebody, even if they're an enemy, that you treat them with respect, you be friendly to them, and you bring them close to try and, size them up a little bit. It's the MMA fighter that actually does the stare down at the press meeting before they actually go into the octagon to spar each other. It's the dog that goes around and sniffs each other to try and size each other up to figure out what the heck's going on with one another. It's just the way you do it. Appreciate that, Helen, very much. Always love the conversation there. Let's go back to the phones. Line number 2. Good morning. What's your name?
David.
What's going on, sir? How are you?
Hey, good. Hey, I got a topic for you guys to research or expose.
Okay.
The city's trying to dupe us into thinking they're going to help us with a water treatment plant near Zoo Boulevard and West Street and Hoover right there by Cox Machine Shop. That is just a junkyard of pipes that they've had forever. I've lived here my whole life. There's nothing there. There's an old junk concrete building back there. There's no staff. There's no nothing. It's just going to be a development ploy. Across the street, there's a sand pit that's been junkyard forever. It's all cleaned up now. Vic sand pit. They're going to put houses around it. City's going to turn that into development. You watch.
Very interesting. Well, I know, and we're going to have Bryan Frye come in at the bottom of next hour from the City Council to talk about some of the what's going on with the City Council meetings. We've talked many times before about the water treatment plant. Now, I don't know where the location is for that water treatment plant.
It's on the south side of 21st Street. When you get to east of Hoover Road, there's the curve there where the storage place is, and then the railroad tracks. And Cox Machine Shop has a building on both sides of the street on 21st Street as you go east of Hoover Road. And there's just a long stretch of land that's on the north side of Zoo Boulevard, past the railroad tracks. That's just an abandoned junk, old water pipes, old junk that the city's had forever. There's nothing there. This is all a ploy. They're going to move the water treatment plant somewhere else, spend $500 million, double our water bill, and turn that into rich houses. You watch.
Very interesting. Well, we'll have to definitely, that'll be a question we'll ask Bryan when he gets in here. I don't know where or what they're doing with the water treatment plant is. I know that they're looking at investing in building a new one. From what I've heard and what he said is that the water treatment plant is, running on like 1930s stuff or 1950 stuff or whatever it is. I don't know. Maybe we do need it. Maybe we need to refine it the way we need to. I know that we've talked to great extent. We'll talk with Bryan Frye about it coming up at the bottom of the hour. But I appreciate the phone call, my friend, and the info. We'll definitely look into what the city's going to be doing. Spending money in the budget's going to be a big issue coming up very soon in the city, and it's something we're going to have to discuss. Got some more calls. Stay tuned. Hour number 2 right around the corner.
It's time for Reason.
No, we changed it. We're the ones with the power of the purse. We'll decide what inflation's going to look like when it comes to educational funding or what that dollar amount is actually going to be. Thanks for the input. I'm glad you like the formula. This is what we're going to stick with. People are tired of it, and if they continue to rail on it, they're going to begin losing support of it from the general public because it's gone on for 20 years. So now they're changing the argument.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
That's what I'm talking about. Welcome into the Voice of Reason, hour number 2 of the Voice of Reason, broadcasting live out of the heart of the nation here in Wichita, Kansas, on the Big Talker 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 on the FM side, KQAM, simulcasting on TV, KGPT TV, channel 2610, if I can say that today. The replay of that, by the way, in the evening from 6 to 9 in the evening every single night, so you can wake up with me, you can go to bed with me, not in the really creepy, weird way there, but nonetheless, you can watch me every morning and every evening right there on TV. We appreciate that very much. Also on Facebook Live running a little bit slow today, but you can check that out, facebook.com/1480 KQAM. You're more than welcome to go check it out. Like it, share it. Let's leave a comment, ask a question, blow it up, my friends. Let's make it happen and have a little fun with that. 316-721-8255. Coming up in about 20 minutes, we'll have Bryan Frye, Wichita City Council member. And I'm glad the last question that was brought up, the concern about the water treatment plant and the investments from the city and the amount of money. We'll talk about that. I mean, we'll talk about where the investments are going. As you know, that we're getting into the budgetary debate right now for the city as of what the budget's going to look like for the next year or two, where we're going to go with some of our budgetary issues and how to move forward. So I'm glad you brought it up, and we'll discuss that coming up after the bottom of the hour with Bryan Frye, Wichita City Council member there. 316-721-8255. I want to get to the NRA endorsements that we saw that came out officially as of yesterday. We'll talk about that in just a second, but we have had a caller that is very patiently waited over the top of the hour, so let's go and start off hour number 2 with a phone call first, shall we? Line number 1. Good morning. What's your name?
Morning. This is Deacon.
Deacon, what's happening, sir?
Hey, brother. It is a beautiful day, and I am blessed beyond measure.
I love it every single day.
I have a question, because you were talking about Trump and how everybody's giving him a hard time. About meeting with Putin and not treating him like trash.
Sure.
Well, there's this book. I think it's called The Art of the Deal. I can't remember who wrote it. Could you tell me? The
Art of the Deal. Oh yeah. Have you read it?
Oh, it's fantastic. It's all kinds of little scenarios and ways to actually have a good outcome on your part.
Sure, sure.
The funny thing is,
it's crazy because someone who wrote that book would be someone who understands how to make a good deal and how to actually make conversation actually happen and to work with individuals to create a relationship to make something positive happen for your benefit and probably their benefit as well. And it would be someone who actually is going through that type of scenario right now, isn't it?
I think you're right. It's right there on the tip of my tongue. I know that he's owned many businesses, and he's a multi-billionaire.
Sure, something like that. Yeah.
Seriously rich guy with really, really successful businesses. What's his name? Oh yeah, Donald Trump.
Oh yeah, Donald Trump. But remember, the Art of the Deal also means that he's probably some kind of sexist as well. Who his deal was trying to sway women into sleeping with him too, right?
That's making a deal too, brother.
Well, then there's that. There you go. No, you're right. I mean, he knows exactly what he's doing. I don't know why people here's the thing. Everybody thought Donald Trump was a great, wonderful individual, that he was friends with Oprah. All the Oprah fans loved him to death when he came on the TV show. And he talked about 30 years ago that he thought about running for president. And if he ever did, that he would win because he'd make the right deal and it'd be the right circumstance and the right opportunity. And everybody loved him and clapped and cheered and hoorah. And he's great because he's not a racist. He was friends with Oprah. He's friends with all these people. Now, all of a sudden, he's a terrible jerk who's probably dumber than a box of rocks, who couldn't, by the way, figure out how to shake hands. He stepped in front of the Queen. Could you imagine? He stepped in front of the Queen.
We quit being subjects to England in 1776. So, I'm glad that the president we have now doesn't go around and bow in front of other world leaders, because America bows to no one.
Exactly. And that's what we have to remember. So he knows exactly what he's doing. He's not the puppet of Vladimir Putin. He is not the weak, spineless, let's just pretend nothing's bad and let's just try and be friends here. He knows exactly what he's doing. He's trying to bring his enemy close so that way we can try and work on a relationship with them. Maybe not start some kind of crazy conflict around the world, and then we'll see where it goes.
Well, because I know you're a millennial, so you're not old enough to actually have lived through this. But there was this thing called the Cold War, and I'm a little older, and I remember people being terrified of the Soviet Union. I don't want to have to go through that again. I want a president who's going to try and try peace first. Yes, peace through strength, but peace, not coming out and being belligerent and being a butthead and trying to get World War III started with the other big kid on the block.
Mm-hmm. No, you're right.
I like the fact that, there's a possibility my children won't grow up in a world at war. Here's
the craziness. We have we're working towards, it hasn't happened yet, but we're working towards the denuclearization of North Korea. We are working with some type of relationship with North Korea to be able to end that conflict. We are working now with Russia to try and create some type of relationship with Russia so that way we don't have a conflict with them. We're starting to have decent conversations to ending crazy threats in the world that could create a World War III or some type of major conflict, and the progressives are losing their minds because Donald Trump was able to do it over Barack Obama or over Hillary Clinton or over any of their precious children on the Democratic side, on the progressive side of the aisle. We're denuclearizing the world. We are creating a more peaceful world, and they don't like that. How sick is that?
It's twisted. I don't understand how someone can be so full of hate that when someone does something good,
right?
They can't recognize that it's a good thing because I just don't like that guy and I don't like that group.
Right.
Wait, that's called bigotry.
Oh
right.
Yeah, that's right. But Republicans are the ones that do that. Yeah.
Yeah, but conservatives, we're the bigots. We don't like anybody that's different than us.
That's
or
right.
Has a different difference of opinion. Yeah, that's it.
It's crazy how that works, right? It's funny.
Yep.
I love it, Deacon. I appreciate the call, my friend. Always a pleasure. 316-721. No, I mean, is anything wrong in that? We're creating productivity, and people don't like that. I just don't. We've come to the part of partisanship to where the partisanship is so divisive that it doesn't matter even when you do something good to say, all right. Republicans criticizing President Trump just as much as the Democrats in this meeting with Russia yesterday with the press conference and with Vladimir Putin saying that he was weak, that he should have gone after him, that he should have been a little more stern. And the question to me is why? Why don't we just trust to see what his end game is here? He knows what he's doing. He knows what the end game that he has is going to be. And let's let him play it out. Let's let him play it out. Oh, yeah, you wouldn't allow Barack Obama. No, because Barack Obama had a different agenda when he wanted to meet with world leaders and what he did and who he put first, whether it was America or whoever he was meeting with the apology tour. There was a difference in agenda in those two. I trust Donald Trump wanting to put America first because that's what he's done so far. So I'm going to let him continue to ride that one out. Let's go back to the phones at line number 2. Good morning. What's your name?
White Trash.
Oh, well, good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Hey, we're living the dream every day.
Okay.
Yeah. What's on your mind?
Yeah. I've noticed that during your sponsor breaks and your commercials that, the placard you show with the quote from Reagan about most feared words in the English language.
Oh yeah, you're talking about the TV
I'm
broadcast.
From the federal,
sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the TV broadcast. I
Sure.
don't listen to radio. Maybe I should, but sometimes I do. But anyway, that saying, I can remember. I grew up in the Missouri Ozarks.
Okay.
And I can remember the gas station attendant. Back when they had attendants at gas stations,
sure,
used to say that same quote, and that would have been somewhere between 1962 and 65.
Okay.
Reagan didn't run for governor of California till 67, so it's difficult for me to believe that he came up with that quote, that saying.
Well, who says that he did?
Well, it does. It's you, I guess. What the program you call Voice of Reason does, because you have it in quote marks, and at the end it says Ronald Reagan.
Well, sure, he said it. That doesn't mean that he created it.
Oh, I thought quotes came from the creator of them.
Well, quotes came from the person who said the quote, and he said the quote. That doesn't mean that he was the first one that said that. If I create a joke that say the chicken crosses the road and why the chicken crossed the road, you can quote me on that because I specifically said that. Does that mean I created the joke?
Well, okay, there's that part of it. True. Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
But when you go to these sites on the internet that have that are about quotes, they make a concerted effort to find the original quote or the originator of the quote, the person that authored it originally.
Well,
quotes are different. That's different than jokes.
Well, and some may try and find the originality of those quotes. Appreciate the call. Not sure the purpose of it, but I appreciate it very much in the sentiment of that. Let's go back to the phones here. Line number 3. Good morning. What's your name?
Hey. Happy Lady Wednesday.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Very good. What's on your mind?
Well, I sometimes get stuck on one subject.
Okay.
I'm just hoping you would ask the councilman about the sign ordinance and outlawing political signs when, in fact, state law says that you can't do that.
Political signs. Now, I can ask him about that. I don't know that Wichita's done that, have they? I know that some of the smaller cities around the area have kind of their own city ordinances on when you can put out yard signs, but I don't know if Wichita's done that, have they?
Wichita even has a letter on the election commissioner's site to tell you not to put out political signs.
Well, that'll be a good question to ask Bryan Frye when he comes in. I was not aware of that one. I know that some of the other smaller towns around the area, I've heard of the fact that they have an ordinance that you can't put out political signs until 2 weeks of the election, as opposed to state law that says that you can put out political yard signs either in the public right-of-ways or in private lawns 45 days out from an election. So a little bit different in that one, and obviously state law supersedes city law or city ordinance. So that'll be a question to ask Bryan Frye. I was not aware that there was anything like that in the city of Wichita, so that will be a very good question that we will have to ask him on that one. Myron, I appreciate it. Love the phone call very much. So 20 minutes past the hour, we'll take a break. We'll shift gears a little bit when we come back. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Big Talker, KQAM.
Into the Voice of Reason, 25 minutes past the hour. Great to have you along today on a hashtag Patriotic Tuesday, living the dream, doing the thing every single day, getting you pumped up, my friend. Yeah, you get pumped up for another Tuesday. I know it's the hardest day of the week, but don't worry, it is also the best day of the week. It's more important than ever that we get a farm bill because that provides us with a safety net for a lot of obstacles that Kansas farmers, got to overcome. According to Rich Felt, the president of the Kansas Farm Bureau, said as of over the weekend, Governor Jeff Collier visited Salina Saturday to speak with the Salina Journal and to attend a Republican Party picnic in the City Teen Center and talked about the Farm Bill. Farm Bill still underway, by the way. Not a whole lot of news that I've heard as of yet when it came out of the Senate. The House ended up passing theirs. The Senate working on theirs, still not going to have a whole lot of reforms again, but, the Farm Bill still at the top of the mind. Here's the crazy part. And again, we talk about the farmers a lot and the fact that the farmers are kind of like, the most important asset that we can have. And the fact that the farmers get shafted every direction that they go because, the commodity prices are out of their control. Weather conditions are out of their control. Hail's out of their control. Damage is out of their control. The gas and equipment prices are out of their control. And they're just kind of doing their thing saying, hey, I hope that we survive at the end of the season. And that's really how the process actually goes. So then we create a farm bill to help the farmers, as we've talked about, and then 80% of that farm bill goes to social programs and goes to SNAP program and that sort of thing. And now we're talking about how important that safety net is for the actual farm bill, which is true, and we need it. Here's the question. How far do we push the envelope when it comes to trying to reform the farm bill to make it better for farmers, not necessarily for the social program spending part of it? How far do we push that envelope before the politicians say, yeah, you know what, we're not going to do a farm bill, and then we end up hurting the farmers even more so? Because I would love to see a full-on reform of the farm bill to where we don't see SNAP programs in there. I would love to see that. But if the progressives and the Democrats have any say in that, that's not going to happen. They're going to try to obstruct it and block that. And how far do you try to push that envelope so where, it's not even worth trying to make that fight anymore because we still have to take care of the farmer at the end of the day? It's a very tricky, fine line to walk, isn't it? Now, it doesn't say that you don't try and fight the fight at all. You don't say that at all. You don't try and just say, forget it. Just give them whatever they want because we're being beheld to them to where they'd block it if we even threaten to try and reform it. That's the type of bullying mentality the progressives love to have with that kind of overreach and that kind of power that they have over a certain situation, the iron grip control that they have. But nonetheless, we still have to push the envelope just a little bit, right? We have to push the envelope just so hey, you know what? Let's try and do a little bit of a reform. Let's do a little bit of a reform. It's a slow process. The safety net needs to be there. The farm bill will happen at some point very soon. It's just a matter of when. We got about a minute and a half here before we got to take a break. Let's go to the phones, 316-721-8255. Good morning. What's your name?
This is Deplorable.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
Well, so far so good. I wanted to thank Helen for backing me up on the Israel.
Yes, absolutely.
But I'll tell you what, Peter Strzok gave me a new name. I don't know if I can live up to it or not.
And what's that?
About that smelly Walmart hillbilly Deplorable.
I like that. I like it. Good morning to you, my friend. I appreciate that very much. That's true. There you go. Bottom of the hour news coming up when we come back. Wichita City Council member Mr. Bryan Frye going to be joining us as he does every single Tuesday. Looking forward to that one. We still have not done this yet, and I've been teasing it since the beginning of the show, but the NRA endorsements have come out for the midterm elections for the national and statewide races here in the state of Kansas. It's kind of like the ongoing joke. You ever watch a Craig Ferguson live stand-up comedy? By the way, he's one of the best. He's one of my favorite stand-up comedians. I love Craig Ferguson. But if you listen to a stand-up comedy, he walks up there and he says, "I'm here to tell you a joke." And he'll go on about telling the stories and having fun and doing jokes, but he's waiting for he still doesn't get to the main joke, which is the last joke that he says right at the end of the thing. That's going to be kind of the teaser today for the NRA endorsements. We'll do that before the show is done. Got to stay tuned for that. It's big news, and it may sway your opinion on some of the races coming up. And we'll have some discussion and some fun with it. So the NRA endorsements will be here. Don't worry. We'll get those at the end of the show, just as Craig Ferguson gets to the point that he does after an hour-long stand-up comedy show. Bottom of the hour news coming up. Lots more to get to. This is The Voice of Reason on a Tuesday. Stay here.
Waking up the right way.
I look forward to listening to you every morning when I get ready for work.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Making it happen today on a hashtag Patriotic Tuesday. Welcome back into the program. Great to have you along today. Lots to get to. It is the ongoing tease of the NRA endorsements. Big news that came out as of yesterday was some of the endorsements, both for the national, statewide, and local races here in the state of Kansas. Welcome in, 316-721-8255. Speaking of, in the 8 o'clock hour, at 8 o'clock, we do have independent candidate for the governor's race, Greg Orman, joining the program. Looking forward to chatting with him, as we've done a couple of times already. But for now, it is time we do this every single Tuesday.
We built this city.
Always enjoy having him in studio. Wichita City Council member, Mr. Bryan Frye. Good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Good morning, Andy.
Hey, it's great to have you back. I know you were out of town a little bit this weekend, and beautiful weekend.
Yeah,
beautiful weather.
Congratulations on a great rally.
Thank you.
Again, I
Thank
wished
you.
I could have been there, but I took my dad down to Grove for his 55th high school reunion, and that was very important for him, but I saw the turnout. Very impressive. Congratulations.
Thank you. You know, I was really happy with a 4-day planning on this and said, hey, let's do something, and we get a turnout like that, 3 protesters, it's all in all, it was a fantastic success.
Hey, sometimes the best things happen at last minute.
Hey,
so.
last minute, exactly. So, no, we appreciate that. That was a lot of fun, and we appreciate the mayor with his letter that he sent for that, with his statement, and with the stance that you guys had on that. So, it was very much appreciated.
Yep, it was a good cause.
So, city issues have actually been kind of the hot topic with callers this morning.
Absolutely, yeah. I heard a couple on my way in. I didn't hear all of the questions, but maybe you could repeat or
sure. Well, the first one, it went back, and we've talked about this quite a bit with the investment of the water treatment plant, and I know that we've talked about the equipment that's old that we've had to upgrade, sort of thing. And there was a concern, which I had not heard this one, but there was a concern by a listener. And correct me if I'm wrong, and call back in if you have any other details if I present this. But there was a concern about the main purpose of some of the money being invested into residential areas and into commercial areas and that sort of thing is an expansion sort of thing in the city, as opposed to actually trying to upgrade water treatment facilities. I had not heard that before.
Well, one of the things that we want to do is make sure that we have the capacity to handle the growth that we expect for the city. So, so allowing for the growth of the commercial and the residential of the city, we have to have a water treatment facility that can handle that is capable of that additional growth. Right now, we don't.
Sure.
So we have to be able to build something that can, plan for the future, for that 50 years out.
Well, the fact that we're running on equipment that you said, is like 1930s? Yeah,
right.
Okay. So, I mean, it's running and it's working right now, but,
it wasn't built to anticipate still being in service in 2017.
Sure.
So, again, it wasn't built for a city that's 500,000 people
with
either.
no fail-safes, by the way, either.
Exactly. So, again, part of this process is making sure that we're right-sizing for the future, for the next few generations.
Sure. No, I know the concern that goes along with that. Of course, the water rates going up, which nobody likes the water rates going up. Same with electric rates or taxes or anything like that.
Right.
Whenever they see stuff being more expensive, that is a concern for a lot of individuals.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so that's why we're taking this in a very long picture and trying to do this over multiple years. You can't build a plant this size in 1 year. It has to be phased in over time, and so. And we're having some questions right now. Are we building the right size of plant? The current proposal is 120 million gallons a day.
That's a lot of water.
That is a lot of water, but there are days where we're getting certainly close to that, and so we have to be able to have that right size facility, because again, we're providing water for the region. It's just not Wichita; it's communities like Bel Air and Eastboro and Derby and so forth. So. We got to have that capacity. But, do we need an 80 million gallon facility with the potential to increase it to 120 as the demand is there? So that's some of the discussions we're having right now, because we just can't build this overnight. It takes some time. One of the things we're doing today is we are going to apply for a federal grant to help fund construction of some additional bank storage wells and recharge basins along the Arkansas River, so that in those times of severe drought, we have additional storage capability, not only from Cheney, but also the ASR, which is the Arkansas River project. Federal funding can help pay for up to 25% of that. So we're looking through every turn, every rock, trying to find additional dollars to help fund this to lower the impact on fees.
Sure. If realistically looking at it with the grants, with the stuff that you guys are applying for, how much percentage-wise do you think of that project's budget can we chip away at it? Are we looking at like a 20, 30, 40%?
Well, this particular application is 25% of it.
Okay.
Wow. So that's not of the 500, but of this particular aspect of it.
Okay.
And again, we can continue to apply for other grants and other funding applications. What we did last week was the low-cost loan from WIFIA. And then also Kansas has a loan program also. So borrowing very cheap money.
Sure.
And the WIFIA one allows us to not start paying it back until 5 years after construction is complete.
Mm-hmm.
So that way you've got 5 years of construction, 5 years after it's complete. You got up to 10 years to start banking that money.
Sure.
So, and again, you're financing it over 30 years, I believe. So very low cost money. We're, like I said, we're looking through every possible way to make this low impact as possible.
Sure.
But it's something that has to be done. It should have been done decades ago. Again, 1930s, right?
Yes, hey, you know what? The good stuff never dies, apparently. Yeah. The other question that we had that now that we're getting into political season is political yard signs. Now, there are some outer, smaller towns in the area, and I've been to some of them. I've seen some of the ordinances and some of the butting of the heads, I guess, that it's happened with candidates. Not going to mention some of the towns, but the city ordinances were that you couldn't put out yard signs until 2 weeks prior to the election. State law has that at 45 days out when you can actually start putting out yard signs into the public right-of-way sort of thing. Do we have an ordinance in the city of Wichita itself for how early you can put out yard signs before election time?
Yeah, I'm going to have to refresh my memory bank on this because I'm not up for election this year. That's not till next year. So I really kind of put that away and said, no, I'm sure it'll probably change again by the time I go back up for re-election. Look, campaign signs are one of those bane of the existence. You have to have them, but everybody hates them, right? Because they end up cluttering. I made sure that the day after my election was finished, we picked up every single sign. We went out and we had a crew and we picked them all up because I just can't stand them. I know I have to have them, but they're an eyesore.
It's the fun process of putting them in everywhere and then picking them up everywhere.
I know, exactly.
Yes.
I've got a garage full of them. But no, I'd have to go back and check. I know when the state changed our elections to the fall, they redid some of the cycles and so forth.
Okay.
So I don't know exactly how it falls. This year is not a city election this fall. So it's kind of out of sight, out of mind for me. But I think you're right. I think it is that 45 days. And then we have different rules on where they can be placed in right-of-ways and not and so forth. But I just have to go back and do a refresher.
I was going to say, I was curious to see, why my many town or city ordinances may have a little bit different rule when it comes to some of the smaller towns around here that may only have it 2 weeks out.
Yeah, maybe so.
It's just kind of interesting why we would do something like that and try to, instead of trying to stay consistent somewhat, at least with a lot of the state law, so that way we don't have some confliction there.
Yep, no, I totally get that.
So very good, very good. We do have a call that we'll take in just a second as well, but I do, before we run out of time, I want to get to kind of how last week's meeting went and what you guys are looking at doing this week.
So, last week was really good. The discussion on the water treatment plant was the big topic. This week we have the public's first presentation outside of the DABs, outside of the district advisory boards, but this is the first official hearing on the budget and CIP, the capital improvement plan, for next year. Understand that our budget is $600 million. The general operating budget is about $240 million of that, and then you've got other things like revenue funds, like water and sewer and airport fees that make up that $600 million. But so this will be the public's first opportunity to see the manager's presentation, his proposed budget for next year. Then we have a project to replace the interior and exterior digital signs at Century 2. The building is still functional. We're still using it for conventions. We're still using it for events. So this is a necessary cost of business, and it's marginal. It's $170,000, but the technology we have is outdated and it's not working right. So they need to replace that. But the big thing I think that's got a lot of interest so far is our public housing and a federally mandated smoke-free policy. So for all of our public housing, we are required by the feds to make them smoke-free. And that includes cigarettes, cigars, pipes,
everything,
hookahs.
Even hookahs.
Even hookahs.
Yes. Okay.
They don't make an official statement on vape. They say that's up to each individual community. But if we have federal housing, we have to make sure they're smoke-free. And so there's some concern about, does that also include the outdoor common areas around the public housing? Or is it just the interior? We can be more restrictive, I suppose. I don't know that I'm in favor of that. I think let's just follow what the feds require, and that's
follow the minimum there and then let it be. I mean, that's a good question. I mean, is it going to be kind of like the public venues? You got to smoke 100 yards away from or 100 feet away from the public door, and you can't be near that. And you can't. I mean, there's so many ridiculous rules that we have when it comes to smoking nowadays. That I'm not a fan of that.
I'm not a fan of cigarette smoking. I've tried to get my dad to quit for 52 years. But I enjoy a nice cigar from now and then.
Exactly.
So, But again, it's one of those things that I understand why the feds are doing it, and that's fine. I mean, you got to have safe facilities, and the fire threat and so forth, and the damage it can do.
Sure.
These are public housing units, and we're getting ready to spend about $60 million on redoing all of our public housing. So I want to make sure that they stay in great condition. But I don't know why it would have to be more restrictive than what the policy is requiring.
Sure.
That'll be a discussion today, but we have to do this.
Sure.
To make them smoke-free.
Interesting. Okay.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
Now, to go along with that, let's take it to the next level. I know the county's been working on like the vaping rules when it comes to public buildings in that sense. Has that conversation come up at the citywide level when it comes to vaping?
No.
Okay.
No. We have a smoke-free policy, but I don't believe I've never seen anyone at City Hall with a vape cigarette. So I don't think we have it. I'd have to check. But
okay. I mean, that's good. I mean, I didn't care for the fact that they wanted to try and impose the rules on vaping the way they do with the rest of the cigarette stuff. And I mean, you could get into the technicalities of the water vapor as opposed to the actual cigarette smoke
and I think
sort of
they're
thing.
still studying it, too, to see what kind of damage the secondhand can create. I don't know that there's been anything definitive.
Sure.
So
that'll be an interesting conversation. Well, good. Today will be that one when it comes to the smoking in those public buildings. We do have a phone call. You want to take a call?
Absolutely.
Let's go ahead and do that. 316-721-8255. We got a few minutes here, so let's keep it short, but let's take a phone call. Good morning. What's your name?
Hey, David.
Hey, good morning, sir.
Hey, I was just following up on the water thing.
Yes.
I have a hard time trusting the water department after the David Warren thing several years ago where all kinds of cost overruns, and now we're doing this Zoo Boulevard, West Street thing. I just don't see how anything can be trustworthy. I'd like to have them see if they can convince me otherwise.
Okay, you'll have to fill me in on that one.
So,
David, I appreciate the call very much so.
So David Warren was a previous public works director probably 10 years ago, I think.
Okay.
And so, yeah, there was some controversy back then. I wasn't on council, so I don't know the specifics, but David, I'd be happy to give you a tour of the water facility. You can see for yourself the kind of shape it's in. There really is baling wire and duct tape on this facility. So,
okay.
In fact, we just had a couple of failures this last weekend that was pretty critical that they were able to do some emergency repair on. And fortunately, we still have our water. We still have our water. So, believe me when I say it is critical that we need to get this facility repaired. It's been ignored for too long.
Sure.
We're lucky that it's continuing. We've got great staff over there that is able to continue to make it operational. But someday we're going to run out of luck. And so we got to get a handle on this quicker than later. But yeah, if Andy can get your contact name and number, and I'd happy to take a tour of it with you and see for yourself.
You know what? That would be kind of interesting, and I wouldn't mind
Andy,
trying to go on a tour. I was going to say, I'd love to try and go on a tour and see some of that and see what equipment is providing the water that we have every day. So maybe we could do something like that.
That'd be a fun field trip.
Yeah, that'll be a little
you
field
bring
trip.
The snacks.
All right. If that includes adult beverages, then I think we're okay. There it is. Bryan Frye, Wichita City Council member. It's always fun. It's a lot of great discussion as we not only get into the budgetary debates and, of course, the water treatment plant, but a lot of other things that seem to be popping up as well, which is good because you know what? Having these discussions is what makes our community better. So to have these dialogues, have these discussions, and figure out where everybody stands on this to be able to make our city a better place is what we're all about.
Well, and I appreciate the opportunity you give me each week to come on and let people know what's going on. A better engaged community is a better community.
Exactly.
And so the more we can let people know what's going on and keep them informed, openness and transparency is key for me. And so, again, today's the first hearing on the budget. There'll be a couple of more hearings before it actually goes to a final vote and approval, and that will be sometime in August.
Okay.
So we still have a few weeks, but if you want to come down today and hear the budget presentation, City Council meeting starts at 9 a.m. Central and Main City Hall. We've got a couple of public agenda items, so by the time we get to the budget, it'll probably be closer to 9:45, but certainly there's all kinds of other fun stuff to hear today, too. So
always a bunch of goodies. Very good, Bryan Frye. Always a pleasure, my friend. We'll do it again next Tuesday.
Thank you, sir.
Let's take a break here, wrapping up hour number 2, 8 minutes at the top of the hour. When we come back, we'll get ready for Greg Orman, independent candidate for the governor's race, right here on The Voice of Reason. Stay tuned.
You're listening to The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
more coming up in just a minute here. You know what I absolutely love? And I love about my guests. I love about our listeners. I love about all of this is the fact that we have the discussion, that we have the dialogue. As we just heard, thanks again to Bryan Frye, Wichita City Council member, coming on the show. What I absolutely love is that if there's concerns that the listeners have, call up. Hey, you're going to have to, put me at ease with this. You're going to have to prove to me this is a good idea. I'm a little concerned. I love that. And I love that we have an outlet and a platform to be able to do so. And I appreciate Bryan Frye very much so coming on the show every single week, talking about these issues, good ideas, bad ideas, what's going on with the city, what we need to work on, what's working well, what's not working well. I love the fact that we can have those conversations. I love the fact that on Wednesdays we have Jim Howell, Sedgwick County Commissioner, talking about county issues, and some of them very good, some of them very frustrating. I love the fact that we have all these dialogues and conversations. David, again, if you do want to do the tour, I think I'm going to go on a tour with Bryan. We'll make something like that happen if you want to do so, or if anybody wants to, give me a call and we can set something up, because I think it would be fun to do a tour through our water treatment plant and see what's actually going on. See it firsthand. We talk about transparency. We talk about ways where we can get involved. This is a way to do it. If we're concerned about something that maybe the city or the county is working on, let's see it firsthand. Let's see what they're seeing when they're bringing up these discussions and figuring out what to do with some of this. So I absolutely love that idea. Let's go on a field trip, and that's what this platform is all about. You're not going to get information like this anywhere else. A little 2-minute TV blurb, some kind of public forum. I mean, maybe at a public forum you could, but really you're not going to get a platform like this anywhere else in order to talk about these issues as in depth as we do and have as much fun doing it with the accountability and transparency for everyone, which is why I love talk radio. Top of the hour news coming up. Greg Orman, independent candidate for the governor's race, going to join us when we come back in hour number 3 of The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
It's time for Reason.
No, we changed it. We're the ones with the power of the purse. We'll decide what inflation is going to look like when it comes to educational funding, or what that dollar amount is actually going to be. Thanks for the input. I'm glad you like the formula. This is what we're going to stick with. People are tired of it, and if they continue to rail on it, they're going to begin losing support of it from the general public because it's gone on for 20 years. So now they're changing the argument.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
That's what I'm talking about. Welcome into the Voice of Reason, broadcasting live out of the heart of the nation here in Wichita, Kansas, on the Big Talker, 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 on the FM side, KQAM. Simulcasting on TV, KGPT TV, channel 2610. Hey, it's great to have you along today on a hashtag Patriotic Tuesday, making it happen, doing the thing every single day. Welcome in, 316-721-8255. 316-721-TALK. If you want to join into the program, the Facebook Live feed is up and rolling still. You can like it, share it, leave a comment, ask a question, call me a jerk. I don't really care. Whatever you want to do, just get on there. Let's create some activity on social media. As you know, it's election time. We're getting closer and closer and closer. Today, I believe, is the deadline for you to register to vote if you choose to do so, which, I hope so, that you at least register to vote. And early voting begins next week, which means that we are getting closer to the primaries than we would like to. But one side that doesn't have a primary, we've had him on the show many times before. Looking forward to chatting with him again. He is the independent candidate for the gubernatorial race in the state of Kansas, Mr. Greg Orman, back on the line with us. Greg, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing great, Andy. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate you coming back on the show. It's always great to talk to you. We got to ask, it's been a little bit since we have chatted, but how's the campaign going so far?
It's going great. I obviously announced my running mate, State Senator John Dahl from Garden City, and John and I have been traveling the state, talking to our fellow Kansans about issues that matter to them, and I think we've gotten a great reception, so it's going well.
Good. When you travel around the state and you talk to a lot of the individuals, what have been kind of the hot topics that they bring up? A lot of the constituents of concerns that they have in the state or what they want to see. What type of vision are you seeing from the constituent side of this?
Well, people have a range of issues they care about. Obviously, earlier this year, the school funding issue was on a lot of people's minds, but there are other issues. Healthcare affordability is one that we seem to hear pretty consistently, and something I hear from across the state is Kansans want a plan for keeping our kids here. And in fact, it's one of the reasons I decided to run for governor. I've got 2 young daughters. I want them to be inspired to build their lives in Kansas. And I think that's something we're hearing pretty consistently throughout the state.
Good. Well, that's really good to hear. You've come out with, and I wanted to chat with you a little bit about this, but along with running, which, I mean, we've talked before about the run as an independent and the challenges that comes with the parties that are going on and kind of the environment of the political world today. But you've come up with kind of the reform plan for the state of Kansas that you're working on with your platform. Talk about your reform plan for the state and what would you like to see?
Well, first, what I would note is this is the first of 8 very detailed plans that we are going to come out with throughout the course of the campaign to address some of the real critical issues that we're hearing about on the campaign trail. The goal of this plan that we've come out is to make Kansas government the most transparent, effective, and accountable state government in the nation. It's really about giving the government back to the people of Kansas and make sure that Topeka is serving them and not serving special interests and insiders, but rather delivering results for the people of Kansas.
Mm-hmm. What kind of steps can we start doing to make it more transparent? I know that transparency kind of recently within the last year or so has kind of become kind of a hotter topic in the state government with our legislators, with the governor's office, and transparency is kind of something that we begin to focus on. What can we start doing to make it a little more transparent?
Well, transparency is one of 4 things we talk about in our plan, and I've got a couple of things that we believe we need to do to address the issue of transparency. One is I want to appoint a chief performance officer for the state of Kansas and deliver an annual report card to the people of Kansas. We spend $16 billion in state government, and yet there's very little accountability and very little transparency about what we're getting for that money. And I think the people of Kansas deserve to know, are we getting results for the hard-earned dollars that they send to us and we spend? So first and foremost, it's about transparency of results. We also have a legislative process that isn't terribly transparent. There are a lot of bills that get introduced and passed that don't even have authors attached to them. I've made it pretty clear. I'm not going to sign any bill that doesn't have an author attached. If someone isn't willing to claim credit for a bill, I'm certainly not willing to put my signature on it and make it a law that the citizens of Kansas have to abide by. Mm-hmm. And so those are just a couple of things and as part of a much broader plan around transparency that we're promoting.
Sure. And I'm glad you brought that up with when it comes to the names on the bills. We've had that discussion on the show before. I'm in favor, as you mentioned, putting the names on the bills, not only when it goes to the floor, but I'd also like to see who's actually presenting these in committees as well, so we kind of understand what it's about and kind of what's going on even within the committees. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely, and I think we need to record those major committee votes as well, so that the voters of Kansas, clearly understand who's behind these bills, and ultimately that can help them evaluate whether or not they think the bill's a good bill as well.
Mm-hmm. What about I know we started doing the live streaming, the video that goes on the floors. Should we take it to the next step as well and start videotaping maybe within the committee hearing? So even if the name's not on bills necessarily, we can at least see what the discussions are being had, who actually presented it within the committee and that sort of thing too?
Yeah, certainly. And we've called for that in our transparency plan, that we should have live streaming of committee meetings, particularly when public testimony is being heard. And we should also have live streaming of agency proceedings. Mm-hmm. These meetings are open to the public, and yet we make it awfully difficult for the public to access them because there's oftentimes limited space. And let's face it, if you're living in Colby, Kansas, or you're living in Wichita, or you're living in Leavenworth, do you really have the time to jump in the car and drive to Topeka?
Sure. Yeah, that is a bit of a drive for sure. We're talking with Greg Orman, independent candidate for the gubernatorial race, the state of Kansas. Let's get into some more of the accountability and transparency here. When it comes to the accountability and even the transparency of the budgetary debates, as you mentioned, where the money's actually going. Are we getting the results that we need for that money? Does that fall into line, do you think, or does that fall into the discussion of the debate that we're currently having with like educational finance right now between the power of the purse with the legislature versus the Supreme Court trying to decide how much money goes into education? And does that fall into that accountability on who has that responsibility?
Certainly. And I think if you look at all of the agencies of government, and you look at everywhere that we're spending, particularly really significant dollars, the people of Kansas should know what kind of results we're getting for the money we spend. So it applies equally to public education as it would to higher education, what we're spending in the Department of Health and the Environment. You name it. I think the voters are entitled to know if they're getting results for the hard-earned dollars they're sending to Topeka.
Mm-hmm. How can we get the constituents, the voters, the people of Kansas to be heard more in Topeka, or to have a louder voice, whether it is more town hall meetings, whether it's the transparency through the live streaming? But how can we get the constituents to be more active, engaged, and in their voice heard a little bit louder in Topeka?
Well, the first thing we need to do is open up the governor's office. The reality is this past administration had a reputation of not meeting with people that disagreed with them. That applied to legislators. It certainly applied to constituents. And so we've called for three things to really open up the governor's office to the people of Kansas. First, when I'm elected governor, I am going to have weekly breakfasts with lawmakers, and any lawmaker will be welcome. It doesn't matter what party they're from. It doesn't matter if they have a different point of view than I do about an issue. But I want to hear all sides of the issue, and I want the people's representatives to be able to have a voice in the governor's office. The second thing I'm talking about doing is having weekly office hours where any Kansas citizen who wants to can come and spend a little time with me in the governor's office, can call in and have a telephone conversation with me. And I realize that there's going to be some scheduling things that we're going to have to work through there. But I don't think the governor should be walled off from his or her constituents. And finally, we will be doing monthly telephone town halls. We'll be doing some of them in person, but make sure they're always technology enabled, so that anybody from across the state of Kansas can call in, can provide their input, can provide their ideas, their criticism, and so that we can share with the people of Kansas what's going on in the governor's office, what's happening in Topeka, and we can solicit their input in a way that allows them to become a partner in the problem-solving process and a partner in reclaiming our government for the people of Kansas.
Mm-hmm. You talk on your campaign about the culture of involvement, innovation, and common sense. What do you mean by those, and what would you like to work on?
Well, I've spent my life in the private sector. I've spent almost 30 years now running and building businesses. And what I've found is oftentimes the best ideas for improving a business, the best strategies for moving a business forward come from within the ranks of the business, from your employees. We've got almost 40,000 employees in the state of Kansas, and yet so often I think they end up being punching bags for politicians who want to score political points by denigrating their service. And I think about it just the opposite. If we want to have the most effective government, if we want a government that solves problems for the people of Kansas, we have got to get the state of Kansas employees engaged as full partners in the problem-solving process. They're the people who know oftentimes what the issues are. They know the ways and the strategies that work. And yet, again, we oftentimes treat them poorly. And I want to change that. I want to reward and recognize the employees of the state of Kansas who do a great job serving Kansans, and make sure they understand their values.
Mm-hmm. We got just a couple of minutes left here. Greg Orman, independent candidate for the gubernatorial race in Kansas. But what's the next step for the campaign? I know you guys have been traveling around all over the state. I know John Dahl has done the same thing as well. But the next steps, where can people find you? And what's the next step on the campaign trail?
Well, we're going to continue to travel and share our vision with my fellow citizens in Kansas. You can get information on the campaign at ormanforkansas.com. That's ORMAN FOR Kansas.com. In there, you can also see the very detailed parts of this first plan that we've released. The last of the 4 elements of this plan really is about reclaiming our government from special interests. And in that regard, we've talked about some reforms, talked about changing what lobbyists can do, making sure that they're not bundling contributions and effectively bribing lawmakers with their contributions. It's one of the reasons my campaign will not accept money from PACs. We will not accept money from lobbyists, because when John and I go to Topeka to serve as governor and lieutenant governor, we want to serve one constituency and one constituency only, and that's the people of Kansas.
Mm-hmm. Greg Orman, John Dahl, running for the governor, lieutenant governor for the state of Kansas. Greg, it's always great to talk to you, my friend. I appreciate you coming on the show. Good luck with the campaign as we get closer to the at least the primaries for the Republicans and Democrats. I know you're looking and geared towards the general election, but good luck to you. We'll talk to you again real soon on the air.
Thanks, Andy. Happy to be with you.
Always a pleasure there. That's Greg Orman running for the governorship for the state of Kansas as the independent candidate. 21 minutes past the hour. We'll take a break. We'll open up lines to you for the rest of the program. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Big Talker, KQAM.
Welcome back into The Voice of Reason. 26 minutes past the hour. Great to have you along today. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. If you want to join in, you're more than welcome to do so. Thanks again to Greg Orman, independent candidate for the gubernatorial race. I tell you what, it's about to heat up pretty good. We have, 2 or 3 independent candidates. We have the list of Republican candidates, list of Democratic candidates. It's really fun to start thinking about who's the front runners right now in all these and how it's going to match up going into a general election. I mean, I'm always one of those that likes to look at the numbers, likes to look at how all this may kind of play out. And I mean, in going into different candidates and who's going to appeal to different people and where it all may look. In the end, look, the independent candidate, as you know, I'm always one that's kind of been personally party Trump's person, and I've never been a fan of necessarily libertarian or independent candidates and that sort of thing. I mean, nothing against Greg Orman in that sense, and he's got some ideas that I like and I don't like. I mean, same with just about any other candidate. But the independent run is a very difficult thing to do. A very difficult thing to do just because of the fact that you're not getting CPAC money or Super PAC money, the fact that you're not getting money from the party, that you're not getting a party endorsement, and whether people like the parties or don't like the parties, the fact of the matter is we have a two-party system. That wasn't supposed to be intended that way, and I don't like that fact, but that's the reality of the way politics is played now. It's very, very difficult for independents to get elected. Now, it's not impossible. Obviously, you can still do it. I don't know of any independent governors in the country, but I mean, Bernie Sanders is an independent from Vermont. He is an independent. There are independents that do, or libertarians or third-party candidates that end up winning, mostly in local elections and smaller elections, but they are possible. They are available. So to rule them out would be foolish, and to really take a serious look at how these elections are going to play out are going to be really interesting to watch. So Greg Orman, candidate for the independent side, as we go closer and closer into the primaries for the Republicans and Democrats. As a reminder, today is the last day to register if you have not registered to vote. If you have not registered to vote, you need to do so today. And actually, hat tip to Jim Howell, Sedgwick County Commissioner, posting on the Facebook live feed right now to where you can actually, the link where you can go and actually do the online voter registration. The online voter registration page, Sedgwick County Commissioner Jim Howell posted that link on there, so you can go to Facebook.com and you can actually see the link there. Click on it, do your online registration, and get registered to vote. Early voting begins next week, which means things are going to start happening very, very quickly. So stay tuned in for that. And as we get into it, we'll be having more and more candidates on tomorrow. Renee Erickson, candidate for District Number 87 for the House of Representatives for the state of Kansas. She'll be joining us via telephone. Looking forward to chatting with her her, and we have reached out to her primary opponent, Jeff Kennedy. Have not heard a word back yet, but we will try and reach out again and try and get him on the show so that way we can have both sides of the discussion. Same thing with some of the other candidates in the area. There are some very heated, fun races that are going to be in the House. And let me just tell you, there is a major push right now from some within the Republican Party to try and start swinging some of this to the conservative, more oriented side in some of these districts. There's also a big push that we will talk about in a couple of days, because I'm sure the news is going to break, and I've been waiting, but I'm sure the news is going to break here in the next couple of days, of a story of insider Republicans that may not be really supportive of the primary process, letting it just kind of unfold based on constituency. We'll talk about that and more coming up. Bottom of the hour news. Plus, we will do, as soon as we come back, it's open lines to you, and we will talk about the NRA endorsements in all of these races and more. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
Patriotism is alive and well. The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
That's the way we roll. Welcome back into The Voice of Reason. Great to have you along today. It is a hashtag Patriotic Tuesday, rolling right along, doing the thing. By the way, I don't know if anybody else is having issues or not. My Facebook seems to be not loading as fast as what it needs to be. Also, just kind of a side note, I don't know if we're going to get him or not. I don't know if we will. It might be kind of fun if it ends up happening or not. I don't know if anybody watches, show of hands, anybody watches The Bachelorette. And as you know, if you watch it, if not, then I totally understand because I don't watch it either. But if you do watch it, then you know that they are down to apparently 3 guys in the running for The Bachelorette. One of them is a former colleague of my own. Went to high school with him, Blake Horseman. Yes, the guy you probably saw if you watched it last night, the guy that goes up into the mountains and did the whole family thing in the mountains, and that's it. Yes, I know him very well. Or used to know him very well. I mean, our high school was a total of 400 students in the entire high school, 120-ish in our graduating class. We knew each other very well, and Blake Horseman graduated the same year I did. So I reached out to him. We'll see if maybe we can get him on the show to talk about The Bachelorette a little bit. I don't watch it, but, I mean, you got to support the home team, right? You got to support people that you know when they do stuff like that. So it's kind of fun. So we'll see if we can't get him on the show maybe the next week and have a little chat about The Bachelorette. If you haven't watched it, then you're not missing anything. It's quite okay. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. It is, I've been teasing this all day long, and it's kind of like a Craig Ferguson delayed ongoing joke. You're waiting for it to happen, and it finally happens. But it is time for our official endorsement of the NRA. And as you know, we are a very pro-gun, Second Amendment-friendly state, which means that an NRA endorsement goes a really long way when it comes to who we support and who we actually want to have in office defending our Second Amendment rights in the state of Kansas. Starting off with the U.S. House of Representatives, they did do a couple endorsements on here, at least. In the big House District number 1, Roger Marshall, the incumbent, ends up receiving the NRA endorsement over challenger Nick Reinecker. Now, Nick did receive an A rating based on the quote or the questionnaire and survey the NRA has provided to him. So both of them do have an A rating, but the NRA going with the incumbent on that one. We'll talk about that race. We haven't talked about that race much a little bit, so we will get to that relatively soon. They have not endorsed anybody in the U.S. House District number 2. As many of them do have an A rating for the Republicans: Steve Fitzgerald, Kevin Jones, Doug Mays, Dennis Pyle, Karen Tyson, all of them with an A rating. Vernon Fields, Steve Watkins with a question mark, did not apparently fill out the questionnaire, has not been elected to office for a record, so no grade from the NRA when it comes to Steve Watkins. As you know, Steve Watkins being the one that's under a little bit of heat right now on whether he's actually going to represent Republican conservative values. The fact that there's a rumor at least in the media running, that he had met with the Democrats prior to actually running as a Republican. So no endorsement from the NRA in that race. Kevin Yoder receiving the NRA endorsement for the House District number 3 as the incumbent. Trevor Keegan receiving an F rating as a Republican from the NRA, and Joe Myers with no rating at all. And for the 4th Congressional District, Representative Ron Estes receives an A rating and the endorsement from the NRA, as Ron M. Estes does not have a record and therefore does not have a score, but Congressman Ron Estes receiving that endorsement from the NRA there. Here's the big one, and here's kind of an interesting one. I don't know what this will do. This may change the dynamic of some of the polling, of some of the momentum, maybe, in the governor's race. I don't know. This is very interesting to watch, but Governor Jeff Collier receiving the endorsement from the NRA yesterday. Now, I would have guessed personally, I mean, nothing against Governor Jeff Collier in this, but my guess is that the endorsement for the NRA and for the guns would have gone to the guy riding around in a Jeep with a replica of a 50 caliber mounted machine gun with Secretary of State Chris Kobach. Again, nothing against Governor Collier there. That would have been my guess. And the news came out. Congratulations to Governor Jeff Collier receiving that endorsement from the NRA as the incumbent. James Barnett receiving an F grade from the NRA. Jim Barnett on that one. Chris Kobach does have an A rating with the NRA. Patrick Kucera, the high school student, receiving an A as well. Tyler Ruzick, an F rating from the NRA. Ken Seltzer, an A rating. Joseph Tutera, a B rating. No grade for Arden Anderson or Jack Bergeson. The Democrats, Carl Brewer, Laura Kelly, and Josh Schwade, all receiving an F rating from the NRA, but their endorsement goes to the incumbent right now, Governor Jeff Collier. Now, again, I don't know what that's going to do to the race. I find that very intriguing and very interesting. Now, the response that we got, because I was curious to see how this was going to be responded to by some of the candidates, and we need to remember, this was sent out by Secretary of State Kobach, was the reminder of the Kansas State Rifle Association's poll, where Chris Kobach won 57% of their support, Ken Seltzer 35%, Collier at 7% from the Kansas State Rifle Association. So a little bit different when it comes to the polling there and from the National Rifle Association. So take that as you may. I'd love to get your response on the endorsement from the NRA for that race. And for the House of Representatives, State House of Representatives in the state of Kansas, looking through here just to hit on a couple of these that I found interesting. Renee Erickson, district number 87, as we've been talking about, that seat being open between her and Jeff Kennedy running for that seat. She receives the endorsement from the NRA for that race. Stephen Owens, Republican candidate with an A. Don Schroeder ends up receiving a C-plus grade. NRA endorsement goes to Stephen Owens on that one. Will Carpenter, Republican for the House District number 75, receives an A rating composed to Mary Martha Good, Republican incumbent, with an F rating in that race. That's kind of a big one. If you take seriously the races from, or the endorsements of the NRA, Will Carpenter, the primary challenger to Mary Martha Good, ends up receiving that NRA endorsement with an A rating compared to Mary Martha Good as a Republican with an F rating. That's the kind of changes that I foresee happening. I don't see a more moderate approach happening. I don't see a blue wave happening. I see us, you and I, the constituents, getting fired up enough to where we want to start changing the status quo. As we talk about Second Amendment rights, for especially if we see an incumbent as a Republican especially that votes against gun rights, that votes against the Second Amendment, that votes against some of these things, then we need to be aware of that and then do with it as you may when it comes to the voting booth. But we need to be aware of it. Mary Martha Good, an incumbent Republican, receiving an F grade. Will Carpenter, the challenger in District number 75, getting the endorsement with an A. Same thing when it comes to House District number 80. Anita Judd Jenkins receives an F rating from the NRA. Primary challenger Bill Riley receives an A rating with an endorsement from the NRA. District number 87, again, Jeff Kennedy and Renee Erickson. No grade for Jeff Kennedy on that race right now. Renee Erickson receives the NRA endorsement with an A rating in that seat. John Whitmer, as you know, already incumbent, NRA endorsement, A+. It's not just an A, but it's an A+ rating when it comes to the NRA endorsement on that race. So looking at some of these, it's very interesting to watch. I find it fun and fascinating to me, at least. Maybe it doesn't interest you, but the fascinating part to me is the number of candidates that are incumbents that are not receiving NRA endorsements. Does that say something? And will that maybe change the tide a little bit in those specific House races? Your thoughts on those and more. 316-721-8255. Let's go to the phones here. Line at number 1. Good morning. What's your name?
Hi, Andy. This is Helen again. Sorry to call back again.
That's all right. What's on your mind?
Well, with the NRA, we have noticed over the years that they do endorse incumbents a lot that are pro-NRA,
sure,
but not necessarily, conservatives or not necessarily pro-life and all that kind of,
Well, yeah, I mean, they
issues.
specifically just look at the guns, right?
Right. They specifically endorse an incumbent that is pro-NRA.
Sure.
Now, and so that's, why we're kind of skeptical about the NRA and who they endorse because, I can remember not too long ago, there was 2 candidates, a Democrat that was pro-NRA, and they endorsed him, and he's pro-Obama, pro-abortion, all that kind of stuff, and they endorsed him just because he's an incumbent.
Oh, well, they look at, the NRA, being the National Rifle Association, the only issue that they look at would be the Second Amendment and their voting record based on Second Amendment issues. So you're right. They could be very, very liberal on social issues. They could be very pro-abortion. They could be very pro-whatever. They don't look at any of that. They're being a special interest. Their special interest is specifically gun rights. Bernie Sanders had come out before and talked about how he does support the right to hunt in everything in Vermont, and he supported some gun rights to some degree in Vermont as well. And depending on who he'd run for, they could endorse Bernie Sanders if that race was slanted that way. And there was even a more crazy progressive on that aisle. So you're right. You don't just look at the NRA for every issue with their endorsement, but for many individuals where the gun rights and the Second Amendment is one of the top priorities for them, then that could go a long way with how they decide on who to support and vote for.
Well, a true conservative looks for the whole package.
Sure.
Not just one issue.
Sure. No, absolutely. And that's why you take this and you say, okay, this person's good on the guns. And then you look at, if you look at, and some people don't even look at endorsements at all. They don't really care whether it's from current politicians, whether it's from special interests. They just don't care about endorsements. They look at specifically what they're saying and they make their own decision. Others say, okay, you know what? The NRA endorsed this person on guns, so this person's good on guns. The Kansans for Life endorsed this person, so therefore they're good on social issues and abortion. This group endorsed the Americans for Prosperity, endorsed this group on taxes, so they're good on tax issues, and they kind of collaborate with all the different endorsements they receive, and then they kind of help make a decision from that end. So some people like it, some people don't.
Right. I think true conservatives like the whole package, just not one issue kind of topic.
Sure. Does it surprise you, though, that Governor Collier received the NRA endorsement over someone like Chris Kobach?
Yes, it does, but yes and no. Yes, because he doesn't really necessarily represent the whole package like Chris Kobach does, but he's the incumbent, so they're kind of gonna bet on a sure thing, what they consider a sure thing for them.
Sure.
Not for the pro-lifers or the
for other issues or anything. Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, and that's a good point. Helen, I appreciate it. Now look, Governor Collier does have an A rating with the NRA, so nothing against him in any way, shape, or form, and I congratulate him very much so on that endorsement because he does have an A rating. He supports the Second Amendment. He supports guns. It was a little bit of a shock to me. I did see that as a shock just with, I know Chris Kobach had made the Second Amendment kind of a bigger issue on the campaign trail. He's been riding around the parades with that Jeep that's gotten a lot of attention and that sort of thing. So it was almost a shock, not necessarily in a bad way, just kind of an interesting perspective with the endorsement that came out from the NRA. By the way, we will be having the governor on hopefully on Thursday, I think, to talk about the campaign because we have not had him on the show yet talking about the governor's race and the campaign trail. So looking forward to chatting with him on air on Thursday, hopefully, if we can get that locked in. And we'll talk about, he's received a lot of endorsements. A lot of endorsements in this race from the Kansas Farm Bureau to the NRA to many other organizations. So we'll talk about those coming up hopefully in the next day or two. Let's go back to the phones, get your thoughts on this line number 2. Good morning. What's your name?
It's Wallace.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
Hey, not too bad.
Very good.
The first hour, was it the first hour you were talking a little bit about the Mueller, Trump, Putin whole.
Yes, the nice Russian press conference that apparently made Donald Trump very treasonous to some degree, apparently.
Well, what kind of just bugs me is, the timing of the release of this, this Mueller, collusion thing, with the 12 indictments. But was it 2016, 2017 that it came out that our very own CIA could hack into a computer server and leave fingerprints that made it look like it was the Russians that were in the computer system?
Sure.
And I can't help but think that we may have a Peter Strzok 2.0 inside the CIA. I mean, I don't trust any of our intelligence agencies anymore. I don't trust any of them. I mean, I'm tired of listening to Sean Hannity talk about, most of the FBI agencies are all good people. Well, if they're such good people, where are they to come forward and testify against, the rot at the top of the FBI chain? Why aren't they coming forward in droves?
Sure.
They're just sitting out, and I don't think that's, all that's necessary for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. And, I guess these good men are going to just sit there and do nothing.
Well, that's an interesting point for sure. I mean, you're right. I will agree. There are a lot of, I think, individuals there that have the intent to do really good things in the country. I mean, when you get that offer to be part of the CIA or part of the FBI or part of some type of Homeland Security or some way to protect the nation, you do it with a good intention to want to do something positive. But you're right. I mean, if you see corruption, if you see individuals that are openly against the administration and want to bring them down through the department, then that's something that should be very concerning. Now, I'm not going to judge them based on whether they make an action or not, because I do agree they should. But at the same time, the marching orders in the government and in that form of departments, I think that they would be very concerned about themselves as well. I don't know the situation.
And let me add the quantifier that, look, I get it. Not every FBI agent, is, privy to what goes on in Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I'm talking about are these rank and file that work in the office that have, close knowledge as to what was going on. I'm not talking about some FBI agent in Kansas who's working, a money laundering case. He has nothing to do. I'm just talking the rank and file that are in that office that know, the whispers that go on, the back channel communications. But let me say this about Peter Strzok. The one thing that wasn't really ever asked, how come it was never asked of him that I saw? And I listened and watched, hours of that testimony.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you what, and let me say this, you give me that man a bucket of water and a towel in 5 minutes, and I'll get every answer you ever wanted.
Sure.
But that being said, how come he was never asked? How come Hillary Clinton, if he wasn't biased, how come Hillary Clinton, when she was interviewed, and I don't even want to call it an interview, because she wasn't sworn in, there was no notes taken, no video, no audio, that she went in for a chat, and I'm guessing they talked about grandkids and golf as well. But it's, and say, how come that's how she was treated when she was the focus of an investigation, but look at how you're treating everybody else? Why, if you weren't biased, why did she get that kind of treatment?
Well, again, that really does show the biasness of that. Wallace, I appreciate it. And I will say, I agree that that's why we have the conversation of the fact that the deep state, if that's what you want to call it, now that's kind of become a more mainstream conversation and a topic to have, is that the deep state does run deep in the government. And, as you mentioned, the ones at the higher ups may not have the best intentions, may not realize they don't have the best intentions anymore. And that's the way the system's gone for a long time. That's the way the process has been for a really long time. And it's time to clean out the deep state. When Donald Trump fires person after person after person, it's not because he just can't get along with anybody. Maybe it's because we're trying to get somebody fresh and new into these departments. Got to take a break, wrapping up the show here. We got some more calls on the line. We'll try and squeeze you in when we come back. This is The Voice of Reason.
the voice of reason with Andy Hoosier.
I can't believe the shows go by way too fast. We just fly right through this program every single day. We have a lot to get to that we still haven't gotten to, but we're out of time for today. Tomorrow, we'll have some more fun. Sedgwick County Commissioner Jim Howell, he'll be joining us along with Renee Erickson, District number 87. Get ready for that. We'll talk about election time. We'll continue the conversation about the NRA endorsements on who's getting endorsed from numerous different aid. What we will do one of these days as we get really close to the election is that we'll run through, I know it may be kind of dry, but we will run through some of the details on all the endorsements from the NRA and Kansans for Life and the Farm Bureau and that sort of thing. So that way you're aware. Maybe that helps you decide on a candidate. Maybe that doesn't. I don't know. But that way that information's there and you know about it, along with talking to as many of these candidates as we possibly can. That's it. Goes by way too fast. We appreciate everybody tuning in, chiming in, calling in. We love it every single day. This is your show. It's not about me. It's about you. I just kind of, turn the wheels as you operate the whole thing. It's time to speak up, speak out, speak loud, speak proud, speak the truth, and always speak some reason. This is The Voice of Reason. Everybody have a great Tuesday.